Brought to you by the Royal Society of Chemistry, this is the Chemistry World podcast.
Hello, welcome to the August episode of Chemistry World. I'm Chris Smith. This month, why plastics might be giving kids high blood pressure, evidence of buckyballs in outer space, and the chemistry coming back from comet 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko. We talk to two of the mission scientists to hear what their Philae lander has found out there. Up first, though, Emily Steinmark has been looking at a new endeavour to discover antibiotic leads in the compounds that chemists are knocking up in their labs. And it's free. That's right after Neil Withers touches on more nefarious endeavours and finds out why chemical plants might be under threat from the internet.
When most people think about cybercrime, they're probably concerned about their bank accounts and whether things will get leaked out and people will sneak in and steal things over the internet. But if you're a big chemical company and you've run a big chemical plant, then there's a more serious concern that cyber criminals, cyber terrorists, could actually infiltrate the systems used and cause untold havoc.
And what's the evidence that that's happening?
I don't think it's the evidence that it is happening, but it's the worry that it could happen that has got people concerned. There has been a couple of cases where I think it was a steel mill in Germany that had a sort of cyber attack and a blast furnace got derailed, shall we say. But for chemical plants, because they're such large things with potentially very, very harmful things in, it could be a real target for terrorists and the effects could be absolutely devastating.
Do we know what the level of defence that exists is already in this space? So, for instance, if you go to some high-end engineering companies, I know a few, they're very, very strict about online security and they've got everything locked down very, very tightly to protect their IP. What's the evidence that the pharma or the chemical sector is not the same?
I think a lot of the very big companies will, as you say, be very much on top of it and very careful and will have systems in place. One of the reasons why chemical plants particularly are difficult to protect is because they're designed to run literally 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, and potentially for many years, even tens of years. And so you can't suddenly power everything down because you need to back up your system or anything, because an enormous reactor doesn't just shut down like that. So the kind of ways that we all are used to IT systems working just don't work in a big chemical plant.
So what can we do about this? If the problem and the scale of the problem is undefined, is it easy to just legislate and say, well, you've got to be careful, or this is something you have to do? Because you can't tell people you've got to do this, can you?
I think the government is probably using two approaches, maybe a stick and a carrot. Maybe it is telling them that they have to do it, but I think it's also making some funds available to help them to do it, because it is a national security risk, if you like. I mean, you only have to look at the relatively recent terrorist attack in France, where unfortunately the guy was beheaded and he was being driven into a chemical plant, and fortunately no more serious accident happened, that there is a risk there. And so I think that governments are interested in helping out their chemical companies to make them more secure.
Well, let's look at a good news story to finish off then, Emily, to tell us about this interesting endeavour going on in Australia.
Yeah, so it's a proper feel-good story. It's the Community for Open Antimicrobial Drug Discovery, as you said, in Australia, that are trying to tackle the problem of antibiotic resistance. And they're doing this by inviting all the chemists around the world to send in the compounds that they're making in the lab for drug screening that they're going to fund. So you send it in entirely for free. They screen it against some key known pathogens and see if they have any kind of antibiotic property that might be useful.
What about the IP?
Indeed. But so the good thing about this is that if it comes back with antibiotic properties and you want to take advantage of that, you can, as long as you agree to the fact that the screening data will be put into a public database 18 months later.
The one certainty is we are running out of antibiotics and we do sorely need new molecules. Have they found any?
Not yet, it looks like, but they're very hopeful. They say also that they're hoping to be able to expand, looking for other pathogens such as malaria and dengue and so on. There is a bit of skepticism. Kim Lewis from Northeastern University in the US has said that this has been tried with screen soil microorganisms and where nothing really came of it. However, having a database also of negative results will be very useful and helpful in terms of being able to correspond structural features to negative results.
Slightly cynical view to say that, isn't it?
Yes, but I don't know, it's a hard story to have something bad to say about, so I guess you had to find something.
Well, let's hope they do find some new compounds anyway. The 2014 rendezvous of the European Space Agency's Rosetta spacecraft with comet 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko captivated audiences internationally, not least because they were desperate to hear how you say the name correctly. The probe also deployed a lander, Philae, which was equipped with analytical instruments designed to sample directly the surface chemistry on the comet. One of the components on board was Ptolemy, a compact mass spectrometer which was co-designed and built by the Open University's Geraint Morgan, who's recently published in Science what they found when they touched down, then took off again, and then came down again.
The mission was obviously designed to be the first ever soft landing, and what we'd hoped to do was actually land in one place, Agilkia, named after one of the islands in the Nile. And Rosetta released, the orbiter released Philae successfully. It took about 7 hours for it to get down onto the surface. Not all the systems that were supposed to keep us on the surface were able to deploy.